Welcome to Clarity, a podcast powered by the Thomson Reuters Institute. I'm Zach Warren, the Institute's Technology and Innovation Insights lead. In each episode, we dive deep into a single question from decision makers and thought leaders from legal, corporate, tax accounting and audit, and government communities. In today's episode, we discuss the big question: how is AI going to impact the future of courts and the justice system? To be sure, the current spate of AI and generative AI isn't the first time that US courts have had to deal with new technologies. Even the earliest computers likely threw some judges for a loop. But the rapid pace of change of today's technologies, along with a caseload that never seems to lighten, makes the AI era one of definite change for the courts. There are AI risks, but also opportunities here to provide better access to justice for the public. Judge Scott Schlegel of the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeal in Louisiana has been one of the leaders in the judiciary on the future of courts. Today, Raghu Ramanathan, president of the legal professionals business for Thomson Reuters, sits down with Judge Schlegel to explore AI's benefits and risks for courts, how he views AI's impact on evidence, and what the future holds for the justice system.
Hello and welcome. I'm Raghu Ramanathan, president of the legal professional business for Thomson Reuters. We are continuing our series where I connect with law firms, renowned industry experts, and tech professionals discussing their perspectives shaping the legal industry. Our conversations highlight the innovations driving the legal profession, as well as the people and organizations implementing new technologies to maintain a competitive edge in this rapidly changing market. Today, I'm happy to welcome Judge Scott Schlegel of the Fifth Circuit of Appeal in Louisiana to discuss how AI is impacting the courts and our justice system. Judge Schlegel, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Sounds like we're going to have a fun conversation today.
I'm sure we will. Maybe, Judge Schlegel, can we just start with sharing a bit about you and your path to your current role? Did you always know you were going to be a judge when you were young?
Oh, gosh, no. No chance. Didn't even know I was going to be a lawyer. I was actually a financial advisor straight out of college and went to law school at night after a few years. The market was tanking, and my wife looked at me and said, I think you need to go to law school. So I went to law school at night while I was financial advising, and then went straight into civil practice at a big downtown law firm in New Orleans doing products liability defense. Then I became a prosecutor and tried tons of cases, horrible things that we won't discuss today. And then at some point just decided, I'm living and breathing these courtrooms. I see so many inefficiencies. And my thought was the only way that you can change the justice system is to become a judge. So I actually quit my job, took out a major medical, cashed out a 401k. My wife was in school, my son was in school, and ran for judge, and thankfully was elected in May of 2013.
Well, congratulations. What a journey. And my father was a lawyer as well. I think he wanted to be a judge, but he never went to that last step.
Yeah.
In many ways, Judge Schlegel, you've been very well known as being a very technology-forward judge. You've been an advocate for and a leader in working to understand AI. So I just wanted to, straight out of the bat, ask you, what are your thoughts on AI? And maybe how has your own relationship with technology evolved over time?
We're all talking about AI and Gen AI because of ChatGPT being released into the wild a couple of years ago now. And I always say it's not tech for tech's sake. It's the justice system, as we all know, has a number of inefficiencies that personally drive me crazy. And I know it drives most lawyers and judges crazy. And it's always been, how do we modernize the justice system to make it more efficient, effective, and accessible? AI is the shiny new object today. I would push back and go, most people aren't ready for it. You should definitely start learning about it. You should definitely start diving into it. But how about we optimize what we already have? Let's stop printing emails. Let's start using these communication platforms instead of emailing every action point over and over again. Let's take our calendaring system that is in a paper bound book that most people still have to go to a minute clerk. And how about we just take that on and put that in an online calendar and send text and email reminders with links to any and all communication platforms or video conferencing platforms. There's so many things out there that we need to do before we get to the shiny new object, which is Gen AI. But that's not to say we should ignore it. But there are so many things that we could do today that are low cost, low hanging fruit, that not only will impact the justice system overnight, but will form the building blocks so that we can properly layer Gen AI on top of it.
So that's really interesting, right? So you're saying there's a foundation of work to be done to get the full benefit of Gen AI, which I fully understand. And if you were to look forward, let's say we get the foundation done, what are you already seeing in terms of what benefits that excite you most about AI in the legal system?
Well, the easy ones are, we can do legal research a lot easier now if you can afford the tools. I'm still a /P within 3 kind of guy. I still haven't fully embraced the Gen AI research part of it. That's bad habits are hard to die. But there's so many things that we can do. Personally, as an appellate court judge, reviewing massive amounts of information and, being able to use Gen AI in a semantic search type of way instead of a control F type of way. And, looking for the needle in the haystack that actually cites to the record that I can check is absolutely game changing. The ability to summarize depositions and summarize different documents is game changing. Again, and I have to put this out there and I tell everybody, do your job first, and then you use these tools in tandem. Do not turn it over to the bot overlords, because you will inevitably miss something. You will inevitably miss the context or the nuance, and you can't just hand it over to the bot overlords. You need to use these tools properly. So whenever I'm speaking, I make sure that people understand, do your job and use the tool to help you do your job. Don't allow the AI to do it for you, because that is not the justice system, and that's how folks get hurt.
Yeah, and that's very true, right? And I can add from my personal perspective, right? At Thomson Reuters, we believe that we need that human in the loop. Maybe 10, 15 years from now, maybe we'll have robo judges, robo lawyers, right? But we're not there yet. Not in the foreseeable future. And I think it's very, very important, just to double down on what you said, to have the human in the loop to validate everything.
Now, let me add something to the human in the loop, because everybody in tech uses that. That's the catchphrase, right? You got to have the human in the loop. I always say you have to have the right human in the loop. And, I use the example of when my son was 16 years old, he became a licensed driver. That means he can drive a car down the roadway. Now, I don't have a Porsche 911 Turbo S. That maybe at some point in my life, way down the road. But if I had one, I wouldn't toss my 16-year-old licensed driver the keys to a Porsche Turbo 911. Why? Because he's going to wrap it around a tree and kill himself or hurt somebody else. And so
definitely not on a Saturday evening.
Yeah, right. So don't say the human in the loop, because first-year associates shouldn't be handed the keys to the Turbo 911. They should not be handed the keys to the most powerful Gen AI tool in the world, because they're going to wrap it around a tree. And so it's important that we have the right human in the loop, not just any human in the loop.
Yeah, that's an excellent call out. I wanted to come back to one point that you mentioned earlier, which I think is close to all of our hearts, right? We all want the justice system to work better. We all know about the huge backlog in cases. In a way, am I right in thinking about AI as a game changer here? Can it wave a magic wand, and when it really works with the right human in the loop, we get the backlogs down by 30, 40%?
Yeah, I think it can. I don't think it can today. And there's many reasons for that. One, most people in charge are not native to technology, period, the end. I didn't grow up with a cell phone. Most of my colleagues didn't grow up with a cell phone. So I think it's going to take time to have the next generation of folks who become native to this. And I don't think the native users have the nuance and experience that we do to have that right pairing. And so I think it's going to take a a little bit of time. There are a number of other issues in that most courts don't have technologists on staff. Most courts have an IT department which says your servers are good, the phones are operating, here's your Zoom link, here's your laptop with Word and Outlook on it, have fun. There's no legal tech design technologist on staff that I could go to and say, hey, look, here's the dream, here's where we need to go, here's what you need to do. It's just not there today. I think it's going to start ramping up in the next 3 to 5 years that we will have that. And I think there are absolutely some courtrooms and courts around the country that are doing it today. And it is improving the efficiencies of the court drastically. Just from a widespread adoption, I think we're probably 3 to 5 still out.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Very, very good point, right? It still takes a lot of change management, training before we can get the full benefits. I wanted to ask you, because it's always interesting to ask this question, have there been any specific examples, anecdotes that you've seen AI in action in close proximity, like in your chambers, in the courtroom? We want to know the good, the bad, everything, right? Just like what you've experienced.
Yeah, well, I got off on the trial court before it was all getting thrown into the courtroom. So I haven't had the experience yet of having the folks filing everything, the AI avatars being offered, the AI enhanced evidence being offered at the trial court. So on the Court of Appeal, we're a bit slower, and it takes a little bit more time for those issues to percolate. But no, I've read all about it. I've read all of the issues, but personally, it has not. I haven't seen the hallucinating cases yet from the lawyers, and I have not seen the AI avatar deepfakes rise to the level of the Court of Appeal just yet.
Yeah, that's great. And I wanted to come back to a point you just mentioned about technology does not equal transformation, right? So there's something bigger there. How important is it that everybody in the courtrooms, judges, law clerks, really understand how to use cutting edge AI, right? Maybe you can paint a more deeper picture of some of the barriers that you see, what we need to overcome to fully benefit from the technology.
Yeah, I think, again, when you're dealing with trial courts, they're insanely busy. When I was on the trial court for a decade, I had 100 on my criminal docket on a Thursday. Then I had trials on a Monday. Then I had to find a way to fit civil and all the domestic hearings in all of that. And it's really hard to be able to step back and go, all right, how do I layer AI in this workflow, and who the heck is going to do it, and where is the budget going to come from, and how do I get folks to adopt it? It's very simple to say, all right, give somebody the Westlaw or the Lexis AI enhanced legal research. That's an easy one. People are that's something that you do all day, every day, and you start playing with the natural language processing, and you figure it out. How do you layer that into calendar management and transcripts and generation of orders and building of knowledge bases? That is a thought process that is foreign to most people in the justice system, and everybody thinks the justice system is the judge. No. Judge, clerk of court, sheriff, DA, public defenders, and everybody talks about the civil side as if that's the only part of the justice system. Then we've got the civil side, and then we've got most of the civil side deals with self-represented litigants without a lawyer. So whenever I talk about these things with lawyers and technologists, everybody thinks high-powered corporate dollars, corporate litigation. What are you talking about? This is just an easy business decision. Just do it. And what I talk about is it is mayhem at the trial court level. It is controlled mayhem. And you have to figure out, all right, in this use case, this is how I could use Gen AI. For example, I talked about the whole issue of self-represented litigants. An easy lift would be every courthouse across the country has forms and handbooks for a particular issue that normally deal with name change, protective orders, simple divorce proceedings. These things are around every courthouse. but those booklets and those forms have not been updated since 1978. Go ahead, take a Gen AI tool, update your forms, update your handbooks, make sure that it's in the right reading level, make sure that it's in any different language you could possibly think of, put it on your website, have an ability to fill out these forms online, use these AI avatar videos to explain the process, not practice law, explain the process. That would cost me $300 and 1 week to get done anywhere.
Yeah, really, really fascinating. And part of the, and that it just hit me as you were saying, right? In big law firms, corporations, you have these massive IT departments. They are making the way easier. They're doing the investment, right? And I think here you need support, right? You are a slim organization, if I can put it that way, right? So I think part of that needing to invest to get the benefits is a bigger challenge.
And the humorous part is big law are the ones that are still having the hallucinated cases. It's there, and it goes back to the notion of do your job. And so when you have this inability, and I don't want to say inability, but this forgetfulness that you would never ever take a first year associate's work product and sign your name and file it. Just because AI talks really well and gives you some really sophisticated sounding words does not mean it's not a first year associate. Treat it as such and you'll be okay.
Yeah. And maybe picking up on that point, right? I think you cited some of the miscitations, made up cases, but it gets even more interesting with AI, right? You're going to have a lot more AI generated evidence. You're going to have deep fakes. You're going to have AI enhanced documents. You don't know what was actually changed in the original document. And like, how should the admissibility, reliability of this type of evidence be evaluated? How do you prepare for that?
Yeah, this is what scares the heck out of me as a former trial court judge and now on the Court of Appeal is the admissibility and the authenticity of evidence. I always use the example of when I was a former prosecutor, I was a domestic violence prosecutor. I was also a trial court judge who signed countless protective orders. And the voice scares the heck out of me. Voice cloning is scary good, very easy to do. And if a victim walks into any trial court and plays a video or an audio deep fake clone of my voice, my wife and I have been together for 30 years. She could go do ChatGPT, create a script that's threatening, dump it on her phone, clone my voice because she has a voicemail of me, and walk into any courtroom and they will sign that. And I lose the guns, the dogs, the kids, the house, everything. And then when I walk in for the hearing, my wife takes the stand and says, "Judge, can I play this?" And I jump up and say, "That's not me, Judge." And my wife says, "This is him. We've been together for 30 years. The judge will say, admissible. That goes to the weight of the evidence, not to the admissibility of the evidence. She has just authenticated it by saying, I've lived with him for 30 years and that's his voice. That scares me because what are we doing? Who are the experts that we have to call to testify? It's not like a self-represented knows, well, maybe I should, subpoena Verizon's records to see that the number was spoofed. That's your first telltale sign. But this is like years later that this stuff comes up. And to your point, the current standard for most lawyers across the country is that you shall not knowingly offer false evidence in court. I have been proposing that standard should be raised to knew or should have known. And what I mean by that is lawyers shouldn't have to go and run around and authenticating every piece of evidence that somebody hands to them on the front end. But you should ask the 5 or 6 questions to your clients prior to moving forward. Where did you get this photograph? Who took this photograph? Where's the phone that took this photograph? And when they give you answers that are nonsense, your BS meter should rise. And then you knew or should have known you shouldn't have offered that evidence because that's what's going to happen. And that's going to start with happening. We can all take photographs of our phones right now and delete an object or move an object. And you and I, Raghu, could not tell the difference if somebody went to Walgreens and printed it and handed it to us.
Yeah. No, absolutely, absolutely, and also it gets even worse because there are pure just AI generated images and etc. And I really like what you're saying, which is um, under these power of these technologies, whether it's a judge or a lawyer, you need to change the way you work. You need to be smarter. You need to have these queries. So I think that makes a lot of sense, right? You just need to raise the standard. It doesn't mean that you are a technology expert, but you are smarter in how you understand technology as well, and that's coming.
Yeah, and look, we're judges of the gatekeepers, but in today's day and age, with the ease of manipulating evidence, and I'm not talking about the old photoshopping, you had to know what you were doing. You don't need to know what you're doing, and you don't need to spend much money to create a really convincing deep fake. And so I tell judges, look, if there's no laws in your state to raise that knew or should have known, then you should start putting it in your pretrial orders that if we're going to handle every piece of evidence prior to trial so that we don't have anybody yelling deep fake in front of a jury because you've now poisoned the well and jurors are already not trusting of digital evidence today. And so if I'm a sitting judge, I would put in all my pretrial orders, you shall disclose to this court if any of the evidence has been modified in any way, because it's not always a deep fake or intentionally it could be enhanced evidence as opposed to manipulated in the sense of you're trying to get one over your opponent. So if you have evidence that's been enhanced or manipulated in any way intentionally, you have to disclose that. And if you have a reasonable suspicion that a piece of evidence from your opponent is been AI generated or AI manipulated, then you need to raise that pre-trial so that we can handle all of this ahead of the game, because that is not okay to just run around and allow lawyers to yell out deepfake in front of a jury. That will completely and utterly affect the justice system in a negative way.
Yeah, indeed. Another topic I wanted to discuss with you is I was sitting around with a bunch of law firm partners, and one of the themes was the lawyers of the future will look very, very different from the lawyers of today. And they were talking about like the university, the programs, everything. Like, maybe just to put it to you to say, is the judge of the future very different from the judge of today, or like, in which way?
Yeah, this is one of my main talking points as well. I think if you're a lawyer, you should be using this stuff all day, every day, because you don't go into battle with an inferior tool, and you better be competent when using that tool, otherwise, again, you'll hurt yourself and your clients. But judges, it's a very different conversation. There's a distinction between a hallucination contained within a pleading. If that occurs, what happens? A judge strikes it, a judge sanctions, a judge handles it because there's an opponent to come in and say something. If I take your kids away because I used Grok and I should have used ChatGPT and I would have gotten a different answer, there's a very different conversation. If I have a hallucinated case in a final judgment that no one catches, or a hallucinated fact pattern that no one catches, you don't just strike a final judgment. There is a long process that you have to go through. And if nobody catches that, then it creates precedent. So there is a very different conversation when it comes to judges. And I always talk to judges about, I caution them from using it to write opinions and write reasons for judgment, because you need to, that's not part of the social contract. The social contract is judges need to be struggling with the thoughts and ideas and concepts and how their facts apply and give you a reason behind it. If you want to use AI to help with legal research, great. If you want to use Gen AI to tighten up a paragraph because you just don't like the way it, fine. If you want to use Gen AI after you've written the whole thing to kind of challenge you on some points, fine. But this notion of judges drafting opinions from the beginning, dumping in, I'm not okay with it. And I think that the human judgment and the justice system are far too important than handing over to the bot overlords. I'm not for it. I love technology, but I'm the judge. Claude is not.
Absolutely, right, and that's my belief as well, right? It is not that the judge of the future um, needs to completely be different and not have that human judgment element, but the judge of the future needs to know how to coexist and work with AI to their advantage. Like, for example, they can very well ask AI to support them to say, is this case that's cited real? Is this evidence real? Right? So you can actually use the AI system to kind of, as part of your decision making, as part of your thought process, instead of relying on it for the final judgment. Right?
Yeah, and there's all these guidelines out there for lawyers, and there was nothing for judges. So myself and three other judges and a technologist actually put together some guidelines for judicial usage of AI in chambers, and we put that out through the Sedona conference a few months ago. So any judges out there, I would encourage you to go read them.
Yeah, excellent. And I also wanted, as part of that, to make a call out that in the Thomson Reuters Institute, we are working with the National Center of State Codes around an AI policy consortium, which includes exactly the kind of work that you are doing, which is exactly what this industry needs to raise the awareness and education for the judiciary, in addition to the policy framework that needs to be there. The maybe I have two final questions. So one is, what advice would you give to someone who is entering the judicial system, aspiring to be a judge under these terms, or to yourself, maybe knowing what was coming in, right? Like, when you know where technology is going.
It'd be the same that I tell all the new lawyers: don't touch these tools until you really understand the workflows. We humans are the expert in workflows. We're the expert in the justice system. So if you don't understand why something is set, how it's set, how many cases can I handle, what can I do, don't touch it. You're already an expert in legal research. Touch it. Go use all these advanced Gen AI tools that help you with research. But if you're starting to layer it into, all right, I need some help with these administrative orders, which I'm fine with using that. So, I mean, if I wanted to go build a full knowledge base of my past 50 administrative orders that I've completed that are one paragraphers or two paragraphers that are just, A, B, C, D, E, and build a knowledge base to get my administrative orders out quickly, great. Do 10 of those before, and I kind of use the pocket part example. Back in the day, and by the way, as you know, in legal tech, back in the day is yesterday. But back in the way day, when we were looking at pocket parts and running to the books, right? It took us a while to get trained on how to use Westlaw when Westlaw first came out, and we still were using pocket parts. Well, we don't teach pocket parts anymore, and maybe you do for like a week just to get people to feel for it. So the speed of your adoption of these tools is much quicker. And so I kind of use that in today's world. I'm not saying spend 5 years, working through the administration of justice and then go, all right, I'm ready now. The speed of which can now be is we can shorten that time frame between adoption of Gen AI tools, but go figure out the job first, then start layering the tech on top, because it'll be a mess if you start layering any technology. Forget about Gen AI. If you layer any technology on top of a process that you don't understand, you've wasted your time, money, and effort.
Yeah, good advice. And perhaps the last question, Judge Schlegel, and this is a bit of a personal question. Your energy and enthusiasm is infectious. And where do you get this inner motivation, passion to do what you're doing, right? Being at the cutting edge of technology and shaping that world. What's driving you?
Yeah. I mean, you heard my origin story at the front end. I think each and every one of us was created individually and unique with the skill set that the Lord gave us. And it is important that we use it to serve others. And so when I ran for judge, and I continue to believe this, that this is public service. It is my calling to serve in this capacity at this time. And I was given this and this opportunity to help others. And so I'm going to help others and help folks walk this journey so that we can have a more efficient, effective justice system.
Yeah. Judge Schlegel, thank you so much for your contribution on behalf of everyone, because that's what we need in this world. And also on a personal note, thank you very much for joining me. It's been a real pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Judge Schlegel and Raghu, for your insights. We're very much still in the early days of AI and generative AI, and there's a lot that is yet to shake out around its ultimate impact on the justice system. But now is clearly the time to shape the future. And given AI's rapid advancement, judicial leaders such as Judge Schlegel will certainly become more and more necessary to shape exactly what the court system of the future will look like. Thank you as always for joining us for Clarity, powered by the Thomson Reuters Institute. You can follow or subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform, and don't forget to share with your colleagues and leave a 5-star review. For more data-driven analysis of today's professional services market and in-depth conversations with industry thought leaders, visit us online at thomsonreuters.com/institute and follow us on LinkedIn under the Thomson Reuters Institute. Clarity is a production of Thomson Reuters, copyright Thomson Reuters 2025.